So let's you and I be honest with one another. There really isn't such a thing as an affordable car nowadays, especially since they put a bullet in the back of the head of the Mitsubishi Mirage, which was terrible. I never would want to drive one, but at least it was affordable. So that means you and I have to go on a bit of a treasure hunt. Is there such a thing as an affordable car that's both decent and sort of good to drive? So a good place to start this mythical treasure hunt would be the new version of an affordable car that was fun to drive. That was the Hyundai Kona. Even in the EV version, that was very fun to drive. And just a hint advice here, you and I are going to be driving a very early pre-production prototype of the EV version of this in a separate episode. Here we're going to focus on the gasoline models, actually two. There's a 2-liter 4-cylinder, but that one, it's not as exciting as this, the 1.6 turbo, but that is not the only substantial change depending on the varying models. Of course, one can have it as front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. In the case of all-wheel drive, up to 50% of the torque can go to the rear wheels. Speaking of the rear wheels, that's where we get another huge change. Front-wheel drive, like basic ones, that has a torsion beam rear suspension. Why is that important? Well, it's not particularly good. The ride quality suffers. However, an all-wheel drive or the fancier trims, that has a multi-link rear suspension which transforms the way the car drives. Then there's the mission of this being an affordable vehicle, and that would be fuel economy. 26, 32, 28. It's a little bit less for this, the all-wheel drive, which overall is a little bit less than the Kona it replaces. Then of course there's the obvious, the design. To me, it still looks very much like a Kona, just one that's more mature, more grown up, which is kind of the theme of this thing. You'll find out throughout the episode. Then they've grafted on this helmet look. It's almost like a modern interpretation of a Darth Vader helmet, both in the front and the rear. Now, before you and I jump behind the wheel, a favor. Can you hit the like button? Share these episodes. You would be shocked what that does to the algorithm, which in turn improves the reach of these episodes, which in turn gets us better cars to share with you. So the past couple of years, you and I have come to expect a rather sizable difference in the weight of a car with a gas engine and one that's an EV, even if it's the same car. But gas engine to gas engine, usually it's very similar, very close. This, not exactly a heavy car, 3,505 pounds, or depending on expressive weights and measures, 1,590 kilograms. Not horrible considering this is a small SUV. However, if this were the front-wheel drive basic car, it would be 500 pounds lighter with that. Yeah, that's definitely an affordable car. If you've been watching for a while, you know I'm a big fan of this Hyundai Kia Group 1.6 turbo engine. However, there's a big change here, and we saw it in the Seltos. It no longer has that homegrown, meaning in-house designed and engineered and built 7-speed dual clutch. Now it's got an 8-speed torque converter automatic. Why is that important? Well, for two reasons. Number one, it changes the drivability. To me, it's not as sporty. I'm one of the very few people that liked the 7-speed dual clutch, but for the kind of person that drives cars like these, buys cars like these, this is probably a better solution because it changes the drivability. It makes it more usable around town. It's not as herky-jerky. And then there's the fuel economy. It's not as good as the car it replaces. It's not a huge difference. It's like 2 or 3 mpg lower, but that is a big function of the transmission. Now, why does the transmission have an impact on the fuel economy? Well, the goals have changed here, as we've seen in many other episodes with many different cars. The fuel economy is no longer just the bogey, it's the tailpipe emissions. So the engineers had to change both the engine as well as the transmission, which did have an impact on the overall fuel economy. So thus far, you and I have discussed a hell of a lot of changes, but we have yet to get to the biggest, and you are looking at it. The size of the vehicle. The wheelbase, it's over 2 inches longer. The length, it's almost 6 inches longer. Now you're thinking, what's Hyundai doing? They're trying to do this whole value-oriented thing and give us more for our money? Not really. If you look at the whole segment, like the Corolla Cross or the HR-V, those two have grown in size, this a bit more. Now, when you think about it, from the whole idea of an affordable car, extra size, that may work against A, something that's affordable, and B, something that's fun to drive. However, there's a secret hidden in there. And here's where we arrive at one of the big benefits of that change. Notice where I'm sitting, a 6-footer behind a 6-footer. And it's not just enough room, there's actually extra room here. But more importantly, look at the height at where I'm at. They call that stadium seating. It's really something associated with large SUVs. You can look over the front row and you don't feel claustrophobic. Here, this didn't come from packaging, this came from design. They were sitting around at home because no one was going to work when they designed this car. And they're like, how do we improve the back seat? Because if we're honest, a Kona, it was like an occasional use back seat, not really for folks with kids. And they're thinking, how about we make it like a sofa? And the idea was make it a bit more comfortable, make it feel wider, make it feel more spacious. And that's done by bringing the seat higher so you feel a bit more comfortable. Then they add in a whole idea of reclining seats. So it's almost like a Barca-Lounger sofa, there's such a thing. Okay, put aside complying with big government mandates, how does it drive? Well, I drove it in downtown Baltimore traffic this morning, the expressway up here, and it absolutely delivers on the intended mission. Is it as sharp as the current places? No, because of the changes we discussed. And so we press on to the most important question. Does it drive like a cheap car? And that's the biggest difference here. That increase in size with the change in the transmission, it's more supple. It drives better than what it should be. Is it the kind of car you're going to go around corners in? No. But the kind of car that people are going to cart small rugrats around? Now, the news is not all good. The steering here, it's a problem. The whole industry had to make the switch to electronic power steering. I feel like we're past that. Everybody's kind of dialed it in. But this one, maybe because it's an early production unit or a pre-production, it's way too light when you're driving it around town or in parking lots, but when it dials in more weight to it, not like a 911 or anything, but more weight trying to make it feel like a more substantial car, it overcompensates for the lightness at lower speeds. I would absolutely argue the steering needs to be recalibrated, retuned, whatever it is, because it's the only aspect that is holding back an otherwise very good effort. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game on the options game with today's contestant, an entirely new Hyundai Kona. Now this has a base price of $24,100. Definitely answers our question of affordable that we had at the top of the episode. However, I am sandbagging you. You and I are driving two different cars today, this N Line as well as the Limited, the one I am behind the wheel of. That is not $24,100, actually neither of them. The $24,100 car is the SE, it's front-wheel drive and has 17-inch wheels. Then of course one can add all-wheel drive to any of these for an additional $1,400, which brings us to the obvious question, how much are the fancier ones? This is the N Line, it's supposed to be the sportier one. It has the 19-inch wheels fitted as standard and the body cladding, that is body color. So this is $30,650. Then we press on to something rather unexpected, a change in the colors that are offered. And here I would say the designers kind of won out over the bean counters because it's not just the German rainbow on offer here, whites, blacks, and silvers. There are 5 very bold color choices. This is one of them. 2 of them you have to pay extra for, $450, believe it or not. One of them is white. Then one can have a 2-tone roof, that's an additional $450. Then there's the SE convenience package that adds things like heated seats and an ADAS system to the lower end models, that's $2,200. Then the destination handling from the US is $1,335. Put another way, that is $400 more than the destination for a $150,000 Mercedes-Benz SL. That brings us to a total retail price of this one, the N Line, of $33,385, and the car I'm behind the wheel of, the Limited, $34,485. So there are some changes we have yet to talk about, and that would be the interior. Now, you and I have seen this kind of theme with Hyundais and Kias where they're doing this like one panel screen, which really 2 screens under one panel. This is the fancier one, which gives you a bigger screen, at least the second screen is bigger. But one thing I like they've done here, they've kept physical hard buttons and toggle switches, where Kia has gone like a hybrid where they have haptic feedback on a multi-function thing in the center, but then everything else is still hard buttons. So bravo to Hyundai for keeping things like a tuning knob, a volume knob, even the drive mode is a big knob down here. Now we press on to the more interesting aspects of packaging here. The first one we've seen before, and that is the shifter. They introduced it on the Ioniq 5, where it's kind of like an old Buick, where it was up here, but instead of going up and down, it's a rotary switch. Now this change is important because it changes the console. I know what you're thinking, a console is a console is a console. But here you look at it, and the first thing you're struck with, it's more open. And that was the goal here. And then allow me to be a tech geek here for a minute. They've changed all the USB plugs. They're no longer USB-A, they're now all USB-C, even in the back. But again, everything here is not puppy dogs and roses. Some of the tactile feel is not great. Top of the door panels, top of the dash. I have shared this kind of feedback with Hyundai for many years. So this is my nice way of saying, great effort. However, let's take it to the next level and make it really unusually good. Okay, so what have you and I learned today? Well, we've answered part of our question. Yes, this can be somewhat affordable, and yes, it's good, but there's a catch. The $24,100 car, I don't think I'd want that one because of the inferior rear suspension. However, I wouldn't want to pay $34,000, $35,000 in some cases for a Kona. So to me, the sweet spot would be a Kona with the multi-link rear suspension, the 1.6 turbo, between $25,000 and say $27,000. There, it would be the steal of the century, which brings us to the wish list. Can we make that happen? Because that would be an affordable, decent, and very good car to drive. And now there's stiff competition from very unlikely sources. The new Toyota Prius, that is a base price of $27,000, trounces this in fuel economy, and frankly, is a very good looking car. Does it drive as well as this? No. Is it as functional as this vehicle? No. But that gives you an idea of what $27,000, which in today's day and age is kind of affordable, buys you. But I am just one man, and this is the point of the episode that I turn around to you guys to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all in word, MotoManTV all in word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, if you got value out of this episode, I would highly suggest you watch my first drive review of the new Toyota Prius. I did an episode both of the HEV as well as the PHEV. You can see that here. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später. And oh, by the way, this has been an incredibly tough shoot. We are just outside of Baltimore. It is 98 degrees out. I've had to stop and start this shoot multiple times because my camera has been overheating. It's taken me twice as long, and as you can tell, I am sweating bullets. The things I do for you guys.